Few things inspire our collective imagination more than the fragmentary artifacts of ancient civilizations, ones that once prospered and are now lost to time. Looking at objects like these can make you wonder what other great civilizations could have risen and fallen without a trace long ago. Fragments of the Past is a fantasy world that echoes the lost artifacts and fragmented tales of classical history. It's an imaginary Bronze Age epic, a vast world inspired by ancient Mediterranean myth and civilizations. It's a realm of sun and sea, of gods and heroes, of war and fine art. This project is the creation of talented Italian artist and writer Massimiliano Haematinon Nigro. He's released an art book on the epic setting that much of this video is based on, and I've included a link to it in the description, alongside other ways you can follow and support him. In his book, he depicts imaginary artifacts from this world, pieces of ancient weapons and pottery and fragments of poems, alongside fully realized images of what these civilizations might have looked like at their height. There's a lot to cover, but I'll give you a condensed overview of what's been revealed so far. I found that exploring the lore of this world can be a bit like acting as an archaeologist or historian, just of cultures which never existed. Sort of like speculative archaeology, if you will, where one pieces together artifacts and scattered literature. So for this entry into the archive, we'll head out into this fictional world, shifting through the fragments to see what epic civilizations might emerge. The world of Fragments of the Past is set on the massive continent of Ascadoria. The imagined record suggests the Iskuzai civilization was one of the most influential in the region. According to legend, the Iskuzai began as a nomadic horde that raged in the steppes beyond the mountains, but came to settle in Ascadoria and built a great empire. It seems the Iskuzai were a people of contrasts, who were revered as both fearsome warriors and great lovers of poetry and music. The artist imagines the Iskuzai worshipped a mysterious and mighty cosmic beast called the double-crested panther. Depictions of this deity appear in many Iskuzai art fragments and seem to symbolize a notion we might call change. When the Iskuzai went to war, or when death from sickness or injury loomed over a loved one, they prayed to the double-crested panther for protection. Only in the most desperate and life-changing occasions would they ask the help of the panther, and they never did so more than 3 times a year. Believing themselves to be divinely protected, the Iskuzai seemed at one point to have conquered much of Ascadoria, amassing a naval fleet which gave them control over most waterways. With sleek, eel-like boats, the Iskuzai upheld their expanding empire, which was composed of various great cities. In particular, Beatrice was a powerful city-state during these days, serving as both a wealthy coastal port and a stronghold of Iskuzai military influence. Some of these images reveal the splendor of Beatrice in its prime, and the unique architectural style of the Iskuzai during the period. Reading through other fragments, I learned the second culture that populated Ascadoria were the Etoi of the coast. A great civilization in their own right, the Etoi were a developed and architecturally distinct group long before the Iskuzai arrived in Ascadoria. Although the Iskuzai took over much Etoi territory, in time the Iskuzai were transformed by the very culture they were at war with. Though in many ways invaders, the Iskuzai found themselves transformed by the civilization of the Etoi, and began to adopt their cultural practices, like embalming the bodies of the dead. Most significantly, some fictional artifacts suggest that the Iskuzai adopted the Etoi pantheon of the gods, praying to them in situations that didn't require the aid of the cosmic panther. The Etoi gods therefore became the most common on the continent. The author has created art of weathered statues that depict some of the key deities, like Faraya, the goddess of wild beasts, Chirta, the goddess of the underground waters, Leo, god of knowledge, and Irigornio, the headless god of music and violence. It's unclear if any of these gods had any true power outside of myth. Fragments of the Past is of course a fantasy story, so perhaps these gods could be real within the context of the narrative. In blurring the distinction between myths and history, however, the author highlights how much of the past often remains a mystery. There are certainly other things about this fictional world that imply the existence of the supernatural, particularly when it comes to Etoi rituals. In some passages, there are rumors of certain Etoi who have tapped into an unknown ancestral power, drawing strength from prophetic dreams. These individuals were revered as oracles and conducted processions in the honor of a forgotten deity, the four-eyed Zagria, the cyclically born, the eel ancestor. Pretty cool if you ask me. There are legends that all Etoi people came from the sea and were exiled from the water by Zagria for an old, unknown crime. It's unclear if there's any truth to this creation story, however. Beyond the Etoi and the Iskuzai, I've found whispers throughout the text of other civilizations, like the Agraran, builders of underground catacombs, and the Kokladoi, the worshippers of the stars. But much of the history of Ascadoria has yet to be uncovered, so instead the last finding I'll touch on is this figure, Huzachi. Perhaps a spirit, perhaps a beast, or perhaps a little god. The writings are intentionally ambiguous, but no matter what, Huzachi is definitely very old, with depictions of the creature dating back to the most ancient civilizations of Ascadoria. This trickster is apparently quite mischievous and ill-behaved, and summoned by saying their name 3 times. Behavior aside, I'm definitely a fan of this strange little figure. There's plenty more to the lore of Fragments of the Past, and plenty more the author plans on adding in the future, although I don't think everything will ever be fully revealed, as the imagined gaps are part of what makes this fictional history feel believable. So if you found the world of Fragments of the Past intriguing, you can check out the links to the creator's art book and social media below. And as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this entry, please lend your support, and like, subscribe, and hit the notification icon to stay up to date on all things curious. See you in the next video, and may the immortal gods shield you from misfortune.